I'm Erin Crapser, Chief Marketing Officer at Markerr. I'm joined today by Brad Dillman, the Chief Economist at Cortland, to talk a little bit about Brad, his role, what it means to be a Chief Economist at a firm like Cortland, and the role of data in the investment process today. So thank you, Brad, for taking time to speak with us. And before we start talking about your work at Cortland, can you give us just a little bit of background on yourself professionally and how you got to your role at Cortland today?
Yeah, definitely. So I went to the University of Washington, majored in economic geography and spatial econometrics. I got a master's of science in the same discipline from the London School of Economics. I then started my career at Property and Portfolio Research, which was the company that later became CoStar Portfolio Strategy. And that's where I really cut my teeth on the quantitative side in terms of forecasting and this kind of thing. I spent a lot of time with CoStar, or what became CoStar's multifamily forecasting model. During the recession, I went to the debt side for a bit to do distressed loan placement, and then also credit modeling and stress testing. So these were fixed income, mark-to-market models for loans, and then also stress testing models. And then in 2014, I moved down to Atlanta from Boston, where I became the economist at Pulte Group, and then I later joined Cortland. It's really the head of research kind of hat when it comes down to thinking about what the world around us is doing. Real estate firms very often focus just on their own operations, their own thinking about how an asset underwrites, within the confines of how they approach, say, a value add execution. Whereas the reality is a lot of what's determining the course of a real estate investment is the macro cyclical, what's going on beyond what is in our own control as a firm. And I'd say it's also about quantifying that view. So it's about having this proprietary view, but quantifying it in a way that allows it to be unwrapped by other people elsewhere in the firm, right? So if I have to walk around and give, my view on every single thing, it's impossible. But when we operate our own forecasting systems, our own market scoring models and this kind of thing, the story can all get wrapped up in data. I often liken it to being something like DNA, right? Where if you think about like the story that our own DNA tells about who we are, well, this quantified view is sort of the same thing that can then be unwrapped and by anybody in the firm. It can be used directly in things like underwriting models and what have you.
Can you tell me a little bit about how your team works with the rest of Cortland?
Right. It can be in a couple of forms. So you will have an element of internal consulting where it in effect is kind of glue that holds the different verticals together. This can often be just about sharing, and sometimes qualitative information and insights about what we think that, just to summarize what we think the data is telling us about what we should be doing. Should we be slowing down or speeding up? And of course, in the context of something like the coronavirus pandemic last year, this was, a very critical function in the firm. Other times it could just be direct inputs. So for example, our system produces proprietary multifamily rent growth forecasts at the sub-market level. And in fact, at different parts of the distribution at the sub-market level. Now, of course, there's a whole world of other things that can be said about modeling at that kind of geographic scale and this sort of thing. But the point is that we're creating our own metrics that are tied to information that we can get in the firm itself from our own operating data and from our own view about the go forward, quantifying that. And then that turns into something that's a direct input into an underwriting model. So you may have something that's just like, hey, here's a team of leasing agents who want to understand just what's going on in the housing market. Let's have a presentation and talk about the macro cyclical all the way down to we need a very discrete data point for a specific project at a specific time. So from that perspective, you really have to be ambidextrous, as it were. You have to be somebody who's technically capable, quantitatively inclined, but also capable of communicating and of seeing a bigger picture.
How do you go about standing up a data team in an organization that might not feel, at that time, I don't know how you prioritize the need for a data team.
Right. Well, I'd have to credit our Vice President of Analytics, Aaron Fisher, with actually standing up our data team. This began back in 2017. And what it really was a need to get our own data, our own operating data about what was going on within the firm to the appropriate parts of the organization, and to be able to track those trends through things like dashboards and the use of Domo as an example. Now, over time, that grew with our capacity as we were able to buy data and this kind of thing. We could take it to the kind of analyses that I do. They're really about things outside the firm, and that being this big forecasting system that we put together. Now, from the perspective of standing up a data team, this is critically important, and it's all about internal communication, about people at the top understanding what the vision of that really is. And to be perfectly blunt, that's a big challenge in something like real estate, where a lot of the people who are highly successful in real estate, let's just say, didn't get there because they knew how to do a linear regression by hand, right? These are people who maybe knew how to organize something like financing, or just bought at the right time in the cycle, or are just very astute on the sticks and bricks side of real estate. And so to really get them on board with understanding about what's happened with data over the last 10 or 15 years, how it's become more and more important, how we can use it to generate alpha in the company, and to demonstrate to our investors that we are doing so, right? At the same time that we're compiling all this information and all these projections for our own use. Well, investors like to see that too. So at the end of the day, this function helps us, raise capital better and deploy capital better, and those two, really feed off of each other. There's plenty of skilled professionals out there. There's plenty of data scientists. I don't think finding the talent in any way, shape, or form is an issue. I think the real issue comes down to internal communication and people at the right parts of the company structure understanding what the purpose of a data team is, what the purpose of estimates and forecasts are, and how they can be utilized. And at the same time, not being threatened by this. You also will get people who may be afraid that they're going to get automated out of a role, or that they may become less critical to the investment process or any part of the real estate investment process, and that they would be uncomfortable because of that. So there's the right kind of communication about how data can be used and how the organization itself will evolve as it's used.